Next, we have approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve with one addition of a memorandum of agreement on personnel and finance.
Second.
All right, motion with that change. Any discussion? Add that to personnel and finance number 8. That's a MOA.
Yep.
All right, hearing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign, that motion passes. We have an agenda. Next, we have consent calendar. This is a notice to the public. All matters listed are considered routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Motion to approve.
Motion-
Second, Johnson.
Motion by Chesak, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Tony, please call the roll.
Bevins?
Yes.
Chesak?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Stunek?
Yes.
Yeager?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
O'Day?
Yes. And we are underway. Number 6, we have public forum. This is time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the council. Time limits may be imposed. So if you are here to speak about something that's already on the agenda, that is not what we're opening the public forum for right now. But if it is not on the agenda and you wish to address the council, I ask you to step forward now. And if you're online and you wish to address the council, please press star 3. Yep, come up, sir. Just name and address.
Paul Scogan, 13347 Norway Drive, Baxter, Minnesota. I'm here on another matter, but I just thought I would update the committee members and the council on the water tower. And as of right now, the windows are completed, they're restored, they're in storage right now. They will be going up sometime later on this spring when the frost goes out of the ground. The windows look absolutely awesome. So that'll be one of the last things, or not last things, we still got the exterior to do, but that'll be one of the things that'll be done yet this spring. We do have a business after hours coming up on June 24th that all council members and citizens of Brainerd are requested to attend if they so choose, and that'll be at the water tower. We're in conjunction with Breen and Person on that. So we invite all our members to show up for that. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it.
What color are the windows?
White.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
What's next?
We got to raise about $2.5 million for the exterior stucco.
2 weeks.
1 week.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Scogan. Anyone else wish to address the council? Look like anybody's online. I'll ask one more time if anybody is here to address the council of anything not on the agenda. Doesn't look like it. With that, we will close the public hearing at 7:34. Next, we have 7A. This is council committee reports. Safety and Public Works Committee Chairman Tad Erickson.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 items on our agenda. First of which is authorize and advertise for bids for improvement 2501, which is the 2025 chip seal project. Motion coming out of committee is to bid the chip seal project with the streets listed and discuss once actual bids are received, and I so move.
Second?
Motion by Erickson, second by Yeager.
Just a
Yep, go
bit
ahead, Mr. Erickson.
of discussion on this one. So there's several streets listed in the packet, and the motion, of course, to include those projects in the bid. The engineer's estimate was actually about $10,000 over the budgeted amount, which is the reason why the bid is to include all these projects and then discuss once the bids are received. Staff's going to communicate to those bidders that to have some add alternates, have the roads listed as some add alternates, so when they do come back, there's some of the streets, such as Greenwood Street, was listed as potentially kind of being on the bubble, so we could add or remove to stay within budget.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Erickson.
Thank you. Our second item is authorize advertisements for bids for the Lowell Safe Routes to School project. The motion coming out of committee is to authorize the advertisement of bids for the Lowell Safe Routes to School project.
Motion by Erickson,
That's my motion.
second by Chezak. Any discussion on that?
So we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. This is a state Safe Routes to School project. There's no local match. The grant would be for $472,163.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Erickson.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Our third item is to award proposal for the 2025 downtown plantings. Motion coming out of committee is to approve the Landsberg Landscape Nursery quote in the amount of $11,606.53. And I so move.
Second.
Motion by Erickson, second by Yeager. Any discussion on that?
Nope.
Looks like none. Let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Erickson.
All right, this is our fourth and final item, which is to award proposal for M Street stormwater outfall repair and engineering services. No recommendation coming out of committee. There was two proposals. There's quite a distinct delta between the two proposals. Safety and Public Works Committee asked staff to kind of go back and kind of create a criteria whereby proposers could kind of present these in such a way that we can compare them a little more easily. For some, there was aspects of the job that were outside of the scope of the project, and staff's going to come back with some recommendations for us. So no recommendation, no action coming out of committee for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson.
That's my report.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. Chezak.
there was a motion and a second in committee, and it failed on a 2-to-1 vote. And I was looking to, moving forward with the recommendation from staff to go with WSB. That is the correct engineering firm, right?
Correct.
And these are professional services, so you're not required to get RFPs to begin with. And I understand the concern that was raised. It's hard to compare the two of them based on how they show up. There's no real format that we set. And in that regard, I thought moving forward, we could try that option instead of having staff go back. These proposals have been made public, so I was concerned about that. So, and of course, the council can make a motion, even though recommendation is not coming out of Safety and Public Works. So I would move that we move forward with this and the staff's recommendation.
Second. Motion by Chezak, second by Bevins. Any more discussion on the motion? Mr. Johnson?
I would like to hear again the reasons why not. I mean, I understand there's some vagueness on how to interpret it, but why would we vote no on this and send it back?
Mr. Yeager?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I was the person that raised the questions here, and really, I first asked of staff why they made the recommendation they made, and that was hopefully going to answer the question for me, but really, as the dialogue continued, my concern is that the two proposals that were set side by side were just so, as Mr. Erickson mentioned, were just so vastly off on the delta that the question simply was, how can we make a determination if we have no form of comparison? So either we are just going to pick somebody that we want based on criteria other than money, in which case, why did we do an RFP to begin with? Or we need to clean up the scope of work so that these two can be compared apples to apples. One had a fairly substantial amount of the scope of work as an alternate, wasn't even included in the bid, and the other had it in. So very, very difficult to decipher these. So I was just hoping to have enough information to make the right decision, and that was really what I felt like I was lacking. So I just couldn't make a motion. They're both great firms. Both seemingly did have the right information, but because it was so parsed apart, it was very difficult here for me to see this. So that was the reasoning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Mr. Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask a question either of anybody on SP&W or staff. Staff has recommended the award to WSB. I presume, but I would like to hear it as part of the record, that WSB's proposal will satisfy our engineering needs on this project.
Mr.
Yes,
Habergors?
actually, and I'd like to refer to Jesse. He's our city engineer, and he received these. And as I mentioned before, when you get projects like this, if another firm is really extremely busy, they will just bid accordingly and move forward like this. I know there was one item that one bid on and one did not. That was our ad alternate thing, and the other firm just did not bid on that. Jesse, do you want to address?
Mr. Dean, city engineer?
Thank you, Mr. President. So both of the both of the engineering firms were given a very specific proposal or request for proposals with a very set scope of services, as well as a background of the project. So they were both bidding off of kind of very similar circumstances of what we were looking for from a scope of services. The ad alternate that you saw in one proposal versus the other was very specifically stated in the request that this may be something that could be added at a future time, but that would be discussed with the council. We were not asking for a price on it specifically at this time. One decided to provide a cost for it at this time and one did not. Obviously, we don't necessarily know what the scope of it is, so whether or not you want to consider that appropriate to provide a price on something, we don't necessarily know what the price is yet. But looking at just the base of the scope of work that we were asking for, that's what we were comparing the two against, and that's why we came up with the recommendation of the WSB. We felt that was the most appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir.
So it sounds to me like the WSB proposal was actually more accurate in what we were asking for. I just have a couple quick questions. This is a project that's basically trying to prevent more erosion. Is the erosion actually under control right now, at least temporarily?
We actually, earlier this year, or last year, we actually went out there and we did some modifications to that. And we already did do some modifications within ourselves.
So with the spring thaw, what are we looking at as far as a start date for this project? And is this going to put it back further where we could be risking more erosion, or is that not a factor?
Jesse. I'm going to refer, I'm not sure of the timeline with this. We have
Sorry,
quite a few
Jesse, to make
projects
you come
going on
back
this
up.
year.
You're referring to as if we were to delay the,
If this were to be delayed another 2 weeks, would it put this whole project behind schedule to the point where we're risking more erosion, or not necessarily?
tough to say. We haven't evaluated the area since kind of the spring thaw, so we don't know if there's been some damage to the area since the river's come back up. River's been pretty low anyway, so it's really tough to say. We have to get back out there and take a look at it if we're able to. I don't think the 2 weeks is going to be a detriment. My only caution would be to Alderman Cheslock's comments about the proposals already being public. It is highly unlikely that they'd want to change those numbers. Well, at least one of them would.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir.
Any more discussion on the motion? Doesn't look like we have any more. Seeing none?
Sorry, I'll
Mr.
just
Erickson,
say,
go ahead.
with the additional clarification from the engineer, I would be willing to support the motion, so thank you for the additional conversation and the additional answers, so.
Absolutely. Anything else? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Against, same sign. That motion passes.
End of report.
Thank you, Chairman Erickson. Next, we have 7B, Personnel and Finance Committee, Chairman Gabe Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 8 items, the first of which is the revised special assessment policy. And the motion is to direct staff to come back to the next PNF meeting with a different revised special assessment policy where we treat undeveloped parcels differently than we treat economic hardship, and further to bring back the process of connection fees to the PNF. And I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Bevins. Mr. Johnson.
So they brought a revised special assessment policy as requested, but really all it did was extended interest from 10 years to 30 years on people who have economic hardship deferrals. And we don't want to put the screws to people who aren't in great economic shape and charge them unnecessary interest. So that's not what we were looking for, so we're sending it back to staff to come back and bring something different to us.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next up is to approve the library exterior and mechanical repairs proposal. And the motion is to approve the high-tech construction proposal utilizing the scope as described in alternative 2 above, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Stunek. Mr. Johnson.
So we budgeted, I think, $425,000 or something. Doing all of the scope of work that we budgeted for and what we wanted done came in at $338,000. So good news, we're saving money, but staff recommended, because we're not spending all of the money that was allocated, that we should resurface the leased lot on the Maple Street parking lot that's unrelated to the library. And we didn't go with that alternative. We went with just doing the core work on the library as we had budgeted for in last year's budgeting sessions.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Do you have any more discussion?
Can I, yeah,
Mr. Chesak.
was that a full approval by the committee? All three of the members decided to go with the, just the scope that was originally identified?
I believe so, that Kevin might have been sleeping during that vote.
Which Kevin?
Yes, we did.
It was unanimous, yes.
Anything else?
Well, so you're leaving out the recommendation to use available funds to, leaving that out. Was there a specific reason why you didn't want to include the lot?
The parking lots should be paid for by the parking lot fund. There isn't money in there right now, but the parking lot fund has a way to raise money, and that's called rent for the leased parking spot spaces for the people who use the parking lots.
That's what rent is. Oh. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for staff. When is the last time that lot was repaved?
We're not sure on the exact date on that.
A while
but we
ago.
can get back to you on that.
Is it in really rough shape?
It's on that bubble,
Okay. So
and
it
that's
could
why we
use it, but it doesn't
recommended that. It's on
necessarily
that
need it?
bubble. Sorry, go ahead.
It could use it, but doesn't necessarily need it this year.
It's on that bubble where you could or could not. And
Thank
with
you.
the fund being so low, that's why we went in that direction with that.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Mr. Bordeaux?
I appreciate the government not spending money that it doesn't need to spend.
Thank you for that. Mayor? Anyone else? All right, seeing no more discussion, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your comment, Mr. Mayor. It's a great segue into the municipal dispensary license application. We've learned that March 14th is when municipalities' deadline to apply for a license ends. We don't know if it ever opens up again, ever. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we know we can apply up until March 14th. Attached with it is a $2,500 application fee. So the question for the committee is, do we apply and try to lock in getting a license in case that is something we want to move forward with? Or do we not spend the $2,500 that the government doesn't necessarily need to spend at the risk of maybe never being given this option again? And the motion out of committee is to spend the $2,500 on the application fee, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Bevins. More discussion?
Yeah, I explained it too much beforehand, sorry about that, but it was a split vote out of committee 2-1.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or discussion? Mr.
Can I
Yeager?
hear the argument against? Who was the one vote? Care to share? Would you care to share?
I just don't believe in it.
Okay, understood. Thank you. That's all.
And I think if we allow that kind of stuff to go on, we'll never stop it. And then what's gonna be next?
Mr. Stunek? Anything else, Mr. Yeager?
No.
Mr. Chesak?
Thank you. Moving forward, after, if we approve the 2,500, what are our upfront costs after that before we ever get going on this? Does anybody know?
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I had some conversations with the finance director about this last week. The application fee is $2,500, and then if we get approved, there's a license fee of $2,500. Every year, there's an annual license renewal fee of $5,000. We know those costs. A cost we do not know if we do move forward of getting into the business is there is an additional insurance rider we would need that's similar to dram shop insurance, but different. But League of Minnesota Cities couldn't give us a price on what that would be if we do move forward into that line of business.
I have more questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Chesak.
Being that the cannabis is illegal federally, and I understood there are some issues with raising funds or sales, and then you have the government taxation, the federal end of it. Is there a risk involved with the city getting into this type of business venture, if you will, with federally it's illegal? I mean, I think Eric Charpentier would confirm that in the HUD-backed buildings in Brainerd, any of us, if you live in your own home or a rental unit that the landlord will allow it, you can grow it, you can smoke it, you can be in your yard. But in HUD-approved locations here in Brainerd, you have no right to have that on your property at all, in any form. So I want to be careful with this, and I don't want to get into a problem. Because if somebody maybe, I don't know if Connie can answer the question about the federal issue with the taxation and all that. Is that something we should be concerned about?
Anyone from staff want to try to tackle that?
They're all shaking their head no, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly I can maybe get some input from Joe as well. This is pretty new, obviously, to the state of Minnesota, so there's no case studies before it, so we, really can't lay into that. Obviously, the state of Minnesota is allowing the municipal dispensaries. There are issues, I know, I've been to some workshops and stuff, how you pay for things with credit card companies and their backing of federal can be issues, how you store the money, where it is in banks, those can all be issues. I don't know if Joe has any Minnesota issues with it, but.
Nothing's been identified of the nature that has been raised by Mr. Chesak at this point. It's too early in the game to know the answer to that question.
There's a lot of unknowns.
Yes.
Okay. On the other side of it, we're looking at something that we've been told by people that want to propose managing this for us, that we could be taking in $1 million a year in revenue by being a part of this. We also know that we're required to allow this in our city, and we've also opened it up for 2 licenses to start off. This is just whether or not we want to have more say in who gets that license, because there are some questionable practices in how the state is giving those licenses out. A lot of unknowns, but the way I see it, it's $2,500 to continue to look into it. We're not committing to it yet. It sounds like a lot of money if we don't do anything with it. In the grand scheme, I think it's worth still looking into, in my opinion. Any more discussion? Any more questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll be voting no, kind of for the same reasons the chief. We have a lot of things going on in the city right now I think we need to take care of before we start venturing into this. $2,500 isn't the main reason. I think it's just something that I think we're better off letting the private sector handle it. And I find it interesting it's in order to protect the health and safety of the community by having it on a municipal dispensary. It's like, protect the health and safety of the community, or we can sell pot. Wonderful. We can do it better.
It is odd. It is odd.
I don't like it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just chime in, Supervisor. It's interesting to see the people that have chimed in on this locally for and against. And I just want to make sure the public is aware that the city of Brainerd has made no investment into moving towards this other than what this may potentially be, this $2,500 towards making sure that it's an available option. I don't know where I stand on it. I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to know more about what the options are. I think that we are correct with James and what the lawyer have said. The lawyer. The lawyer. I think there's a lot up in the air. But I do like that we have had local people interested in making these proposals to us. So I'd like to see what comes back from the public and see where this goes. The city of Brainerd, I want to make sure that people are aware of that. The city of Brainerd is not making a decision on whether or not it wants to be in the marijuana business or not. But it is our job to make sure that we have all the facts and all the information we get our hands on. So I support the small expenditure to make sure that we're making a wise decision in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else?
Yeah, the annex would make a great location.
I don't know if we want to connect it to City Hall if we go that route, but
Here it smells.
We're gonna use those planters downtown.
that's not, I don't think that's what we're looking at, but. Anything else of value? Seeing none.
Home.
Last minute here.
Yeah,
My
Mr. Erickson.
My line of questioning, my concern was if we were to pursue this and we were to become a state licensed dispensary or partner with that, does that immediately put us in violation of federal law, similar to what Councilman Chesak has known? I guess I'd like clarification on that before I could vote in favor of it. So I'll be voting no as well.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Anything else? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign.
Oh,
4-3.
Roll call, please.
Bevins?
Yes.
Chesak?
No,
Johnson?
yep.
Stunek?
Nope.
Yeager?
Nope.
Erickson?
No.
O'Day?
Yes, that motion fails, and we are out of the marijuana business.
not necessarily.
Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next up is to accept a resignation of CSO Joshua Winslow. And the motion is to accept Mr. Joshua Winslow's resignation effective March 5th. And I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Stunek. Any more discussion? Mr.
I
Johnson?
guess I forgot to include in the motion, it is also authorizing staff to backfill the position. As we always state with CSOs, it's not budgeted by number of employees, it's budgeted by number of hours worked. And we just have a pool of employees who use that time.
Seconder okay with that change?
Yes.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
What are you, to pick on me tonight or what?
Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson.
All right, we have another resignation, and the motion is to accept Mr. Travis Donnelly's resignation effective February 28th, and further to authorize staff to begin the hiring process to backfill the position, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Bevins. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you. Next up is a hiring, and the motion is to ratify the hiring of Wyatt Pribble for Street Maintenance 1 position effective March 17th, 2025, and further that he be placed on step 3 of the Maintenance 1 wage grid at $28.20 per hour, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Stunek. Any more discussion? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, we had 44 applications for the position, so that's nice to have that we have interest in working for the city. The justification for placing him on step 3 is he's coming from a different street department where he has a few years' experience. He already has his CDL. He's a DOT inspector. There's a lot of good qualities that he already has ready to go and hit the ground running in our street department.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next up is the fire contract formula for 2026. It's only informational. We don't get to vote on anything, but it's all there if you read it. I think the city of Brainerd's cost is going up $20,000 next year, Connie?
17,500.
17.5 next year. There it is, 17,505.19. Informational only, but of also note, I did request, not in writing yet, Jeff, I'll send an email, but I did request that we do bring to the council the formula and the fire service districts and all that sometime this year to look at. It hasn't been looked at in over a decade at the council level, and it's just something that should be periodically reviewed, I think. Because we don't make changes at this meeting when it's already been presented, it's already been given to the townships. So if we do want to make changes, we gotta look at it some other time.
Maybe a history of it.
That would be nice.
Okay.
And that was informational. So number 8 that we added is a memorandum of agreement for lasting peace in our time with the IBEW Administrative Support Bargaining Unit. We met today, just a few hours, had a good conversation with the union, and we agreed to all 4 of the positions at the wages that we proposed from the Flaherty and Hood wage grid. And if we approve this tonight, the union has already approved, we can move forward and begin the hiring process tomorrow.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chesak?
Oh, I move approval on it? Did I do that yet?
You did not.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Stunek. Mr. Chesak?
Could Mr. Johnson repeat, was that for lasting peace in our time?
Yeah, I was holding it up like Neville Chamberlain.
Nice job. It was dramatic.
It was for effect.
Well done.
Nothing of major value, once again. Anyone else? Questions on this one? Looks like none. Let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Chairman Johnson?
End of report.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Moving on to number 8, we have unfinished business. 8A is exception of the resignation of Patrick Wusow from the
Move approval, Johnson.
Second.
the Public Utilities Commission. We have a motion by Johnson, second by Bevins. Any discussion? Oh, Mr. Bedell.
Yeah, may I just state that his resignation was simply a license plate from another state. Falsehoods here. Right?
He moved to Florida.
He moved to Florida, but simply a picture of a Florida license plate. Come
I want
on.
to go on the record saying I do hate him.
Come on, Patrick.
Must have another job for him, don't we?
Yeah, what's going to happen?
He'll be back in a few months when it warms up.
Yeah, looking
And
for
we'll see him in
something to
one
do.
form or another.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chesak.
I would like to thank Mr. Wusso for his commitment to the utilities and his long service out there, and of course his other help he's given us throughout the last couple of years with his interim positions. So,
Mr. Chesak.
Motion.
I too agree. Any more discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. 9B, we have a call for applicants. First, we'll have the Honorable Mayor Bedell.
Thank you, Council President. The following boards and commissions have applications available. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2025, 2 terms expiring 2026. Housing Redevelopment Authority, 1 term expiring 2027. Library Board, 1 term expiring 2027. Transportation Advisory Committee, 2 terms expiring 2026. And now, officially, the Public Utilities Commission, 1 term expiring whenever that expires.
Any appointments tonight?
I have no appointments tonight, no.
And I, as president, have 1 term on the Airport Commission that expires 2027 and 3 terms on the Water Tower Committee with unknown expiration dates. And I would like to make 1 appointment tonight for the Airport Commission, and that would be Andrew Scheib.
so moved.
Motion by, was it Chesak?
Yeah, sorry.
Second by Yeager. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bevins?
I will be voting against Mr. Scheib as the representative of the North Side. I made the egregious mistake of approving Mr. Scheib's approval to the Park Board 2 weeks ago, or roughly, and received 100% complaints regarding Mr. Scheib on city commissions and his complete ignoring of North Side needs and requests on the Park Board. So I will try and make up and speak against Mr. Scheib for the Airport Commission in that he has been unwilling to represent the citizens of Brainerd.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. Anything to do with the airport?
No, it has to do with representation,
Okay. But nothing specifically.
nothing specific to the airport.
Thank you. Any more discussion? It's like none. Let's go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Against? Same
Aye.
sign? Is that 2 against? All right. That motion passes.
Who were the 2 against?
Stunek and Bevins.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8C. This is a consideration of Public Utilities Commission recommendation for Central Business District Incentive Policy. I believe this is Community Development Director James Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. President. So upon passage of Ordinance 1578, which now allows mixed-use development in the Commercial Corridor District, City Council directed staff to obtain a recommendation from the Public Utilities Commission regarding forgiveness of SAC and WAC charges in the Central Business District Incentive Policy, as that ordinance has an effect on the policy. Public Utilities Commission discussed this policy at their February 25th meeting and continued to express concerns that the commission should review forgiveness of SAC and WAC charges. The motion coming out of the meeting was that the commission should review all SAC and WAC forgiveness if the project valuation exceeds $150,000. That's what we do for permits. There's options here for city council to consider. Option 1, BPU commission shall review all SAC and WAC charges as stated in their recommended motion when the project valuation exceeds $150,000. Option 2 is leave the central business district policy as is and all SAC and WAC charges are forgiven for all projects. Option 3, BPU commission shall review and provide a recommendation to council for all projects at a to be determined dollar value for forgiveness of SAC and WAC charges. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kravik. And just to clarify, this would be asking for a recommendation to come back to council. Their recommendation wouldn't be final. It would still be up to council to make that decision following the recommendation.
It would be. So this would be direction. If there are to be changes, staff would have to bring back a revised policy.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for staff? Mr. Bevins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It actually might be for you, being on the EDA. I can't remember, but this is a fairly short-lived incentive, yes? Didn't the EDA
I don't know if
agree
we
to
put a official timestamp on it. The goal is to get as much of this underway during our highway construction and
That's what I
have it
thought.
done as before the end of the construction. And I think we're just planning on revisiting it at that time, but I don't know if we have a set date, a sunset date on that, Mr. Kravik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So it has the same sunset date that the River to Rails incentive policy had, which was 10 years. That was passed in 2019, I think summer of 2019. So at the conclusion of that policy, it was revised Central Business District would have that same deadline. So they're roughly, you're looking another 4 years.
So another year or two after the highway construction should be done.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Mr. Chazak?
Yeah, at the Utility Commission meeting, perhaps a little confusion. It's kind of, this is kind of an interesting item in many respects, but I had a conversation with James, and I think my name is in that agenda request that I would propose that if the recommendation coming out of the Public Utility Commission for the valuation of 150, that kind of covers everything that you're going to see. Any kind of project. And in talking with James, I was thinking maybe something like a waiver amount up to a certain amount to where we wouldn't interfere with, say, something up to a fourplex. When you total up the dollars on a fourplex, it would be under that $15,000 amount. And that way it wouldn't need to go for a recommendation. And that perhaps wouldn't stall any kind of permitting process by having to go to the utilities for their recommendation. Of course, it's a recommendation. I think what it is just a form of cooperation, a form of courtesy to just let them keep in the loop. Mike Anglin, the new commission chair, also kind of wants to talk about these things if we can sometime in the near future. I don't know if that was included in the agenda request. I can't remember that, but it was like an option, so we wouldn't be looking at virtually everything that comes up. And would that be a fair way to say that, James? How we?
Yeah, that's correct. So I included what the price was for essentially a fourplex. So, you know, again, $150,000 typically would be any type of single-family home. So every single-family home in this area would have to come before review of the Public Utilities Commission and City Council. So if there were a to-be-determined value, that could be different then.
So, yeah, in other words, that 150,000 was a recommendation out of the Utility Commission meeting, and I just thought as an option, let's look at a valued amount of the waiver, which would exceed a fourplex. So anything like over a fourplex, they'd look at and say, you know, it also keeps them in the loop too. As much as we like to say we can do that all the time, that, you know, it does sometimes things get a little mixed up from time to time. You know, people, I think we're doing a good job of doing better. But another item here is the codes are included in the packet for the WAC and SAC. And if you look there are some definite, we need to have an understanding of how those are applied. So we want to make sure that SAC and WAC can be used for certain things that maybe has been misunderstood in the past that we've talked about. And I would encourage everybody to read those codes. I think in the first paragraph of each one, you can see that there are times, the sack and whack, it's not just for, there aren't the limitations that we may have been told before, and how we can and can't use them. So it's a pretty easy to understand. So I just wanted to make sure those were in there so everybody can take a look at that. I would encourage you to read that so we all can have the same understanding of how those are applied. That's pretty much all I have. But otherwise, if there isn't an appetite for the recommendation from the Public Utilities Commission, I would think that the total value of the sack and whack, if it exceeds that fourplex amount of that roughly $15,000, I would be willing to move forward with that if there isn't an appetite for the first option that was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chesak. Anyone else? Mr. Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Mr. Chesak was interested in making a motion and picking an exact dollar figure rather than a range, I'd be willing to second it.
Mr. Chair, or Mr. President, I would move that we do a total value of sack and whack exceeding $15,000 or more than would be gone before the Utility Commission to give a recommendation back to the council.
Second.
Motion by Chesak, second by Bevins. Any discussion on the motion? Myself, I don't see a problem with any of this. I think it's always good to have good communication from our BPU commission, and this way we can catch anything that we might not have thought of. My only concern would be slowing down a project. BPU committee, do they meet still once a month?
Last Tuesday of the month.
Okay. So that would be a concern, but most of these projects, as we know, take a lot longer than that anyway to get going. Mr. Johnson, do you have comments?
Yeah, I'll be voting no. I just think it adds bureaucratic red tape. I think there's a way we could improve communication by, including building permits have been applied for or sack and whack fees in the Public Utility Commission's packet, so it gets in front of them, and if they start seeing that there's a problem happening, then they can come to us. But I don't see why we would send a city fee over to a commission to review that has to come back to the council, that we've already set a policy to waive the fee, that now we're gonna receive a recommendation to maybe waive it, maybe not, when we already have a policy that it's waived. So I don't see the sense in it. And also, it's a city fee, it's not a public utility fee. I would think it absolutely ridiculous if somebody on the city council thought that the Public Utility Commission needs to send every electric bill to us for approval and our input before they send it out to somebody. It's a fee, it's a charge to a user. Let the city have their fees, let the commission have their fees. So I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else have comments? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Same sign.
Aye.
We do a roll call, please?
Bevins?
No.
Chesak?
Yes.
Johnson?
No.
Stunek?
No.
Yeager?
Nope.
Erickson?
Yes.
O'Day?
Yes. That motion fails. So unless,
President,
Mr. Johnson,
I would move to go with, sorry, I scrolled down, reading there. Option 2, and just leave the policy as is. And I so
Second.
motion by Johnson, second by Bevins. Any discussion? See any?
Mr. President, I'm going to vote no, just to be consistent with I think it would be good to get the recommendation from BPU. I think, as was mentioned earlier, I think just additional input is always well worth it, so.
Thank you. Mr. Bordeaux?
Go to Mayor.
Sure. I was just going to say, I don't dislike Councilman Johnson's approach of sending these to the BPU Commission. They can have in their packet, they can review them, and if we get to a point where it's become a problem, we can revisit this again. It's just 4 years more of this project.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, and the reason to support leaving it as is because we have the policy. The policy is published on the website. Somebody calls Paul Scogan at High Tech. He says, if you're going to build a house here, the policy says your sack and whack is free. Paul Scogan tells his client that, But then the client has to go to BPU and beg for it to be free, and BPU may say they don't like it, and then the council may go against the policy. It makes things more complicated than they need to be in a small town.
I have a question for you. Would you like to amend your motion to include sending anything that's been approved by us in this policy to the BPU commission packets?
I would add that.
That's more in line with what you're suggesting, because
Yep.
in the long run, if they keep looking at those, like you're saying, they might catch something that we weren't
And if
catching.
they catch that it's getting out of hand, that we totally
Still
missed.
gets us to the point
Yeah.
where we would like. Okay. So, motion amended.
Can we just reinstate the motion since we added stuff, just so we know for sure?
Yeah, so the motion is option 2, leave the central business district policy as is, and all SAC and WAC charges are forgiven for all projects in the district, and further, to include in Public Utility Commission packets all forgiven SAC and WAC fee charges.
Agreed.
All right.
I was the seconder.
Any more discussion?
Discussion with the addition, with the clarification, I would support.
Okay. Any more? Looks like none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. All right. Moving on, we have tonight's big item. Looks like everybody's here for this one. This is 9A. We have a consideration of the preliminary plat request for St. Francis Church, 411 North 10th Street. So the way this one will go, first we'll have Mr. Kramvik introduce and run down this item. If anyone on council after that has questions for staff or Mr. Kramvik, that would be the time afterwards. I've spoke with some of you in the audience prior to the meeting. Father Gary, I know you would like to speak. I would like to have Father Gary come up and speak for a few minutes, whatever you'd like, just as a representative of St. Francis. There already was a public hearing at the Planning and Zoning. We've received a lot of letters, mostly in support from parishioners. We've received some letters opposing. If you've sent a letter following Mr. Gary, Father Gary, if you've already sent a letter and you don't have anything new to add, I'd suggest we keep it to anything that's new if you're gonna come up to the microphone, just to keep this a little shorter. I trust the council has gone over all of these letters and we're very aware of where people are standing. After that, we'll have discussion as council, but I would also suggest that as council, whether this goes through, whether it doesn't go through, we have some recommendations for St. Francis to come back and keep going in the direction that they would like to go. Or maybe it all goes through. We'll find out. I do want to say congratulations to St. Francis to getting to this point. It's exciting to see that you guys are becoming this successful. It's good for our city, it's good for you guys, it's good for the community as a whole, but we just have to make sure that we do it right. So let's have that discussion right now. So I'll send it over to Mr. Kramvik if you want to introduce this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So the purpose of this preliminary plat request is to consolidate 14 parcels into 3 lots, one each for the church, school, and rectory. The preliminary plat also proposes the street vacation of North 9th Street between Ivy Street and Juniper Street, and the demolition of 3 single-family homes to construct 1 large rectory. The property is located in the traditional neighborhood 1, TN1 district. The applicant will also request a rezoning to public, semi-public district at a future meeting. The sole matter before council tonight is the preliminary plat, which the Planning Commission recommended approval with the stated conditions in the agenda. The preliminary plat will not work without the proposed street vacation, so the vacation should be discussed and considered as part of the preliminary plat request tonight. Also, the PSP district is listed in the preliminary plat based on what the setbacks are, and there's some other conditions, whether it's PSP or TN1. So it's not up for consideration tonight, but general comments to the applicant can be made and would be helpful moving forward in the process. The PSP district, just of note, would permit the demolition of the 3 homes for 1 rectory by permitted right. It would also allow future additions to the school and church without a conditional use permit. If the property remained TN1 district, it would still allow for all proposed uses, but would need 3 conditional use permits, one of which to make the plat work, and then as well as all future additions would also require CUPs to the church or the school. So the application is quite different depending on which zoning district the applicant's applying for. In the event the street is vacated, the fire department will require the street to remain open until 2 interior homes are demolished. Also, BPU would require all service lines not to be used in the future would be capped at the main line. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jesse regarding the street vacation.
Jesse Dean, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. President. So like James mentioned, one requirement for the preliminary plat is that the vacation be part of that. So that's that block of North 9th between Juniper and Ivy. So we've received the petition from the church, but it was not in time for this packet, so we've included the memo that lays out several considerations for review of that street vacation. As the sole owner of all the parcels adjacent to the street, the block of street is essentially intended to service the petitioner. The main concern is laid out in the memo would be the loss of the on-street parking. As on-street parking is typically intended to serve the adjacent properties, the request for vacation by the petitioner could be considered a land use issue. If no replacement of on-street parking is provided, the loss of these stalls can cause issue with visitors to the church and school, utilizing some of the other adjacent streets that could cause some conflict with the neighboring properties. So council could request some requirements to account for that. However, there is no specifics in the plan at this time of how the loss of the on-street parking stalls would be addressed. So staff's recommendation is that the council approve the vacation as part of the preliminary process. However, council can place some consideration on how the petitioner is going to address this issue when reviewing the preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Does anyone have questions for staff? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I've got a question for either the Public Works Director or City Engineer. Our charter is silent on street vacations, so it kind of generally falls back to the statutory language. And really, you need to look for a public benefit to vacate a street. So Jesse, can you come explain to me the public benefit of eliminating that street, eliminating that parking, eliminating the access of the public in general to go there and turning it over to a private entity, where the public benefit of that is?
Mr. Dean?
Yes, sir. So I listed a few of those items in the attached memo that the intent of a local street is really to service the adjacent properties, to provide access for those adjacent properties. It's not necessarily as a through street, but we also reviewed it as a through street because it does connect to some other ones. So with that, based on who's owning the adjacent properties, we felt that there wasn't enough public benefit that would justify the vacation from this petitions. That's where the recommendation came from this.
So you can't find a public benefit of vacating it, so we should vacate it?
I'm sorry?
What is the public benefit of vacating it?
Based on the review of the petition, the adjacent property, they are the ones that are receiving the public benefit of the adjacent local street. And because they're the ones that are receiving the benefit of the street, that's where our recommendation is, where the benefit of it is.
So it's not a public benefit, it's a neighboring property benefit, is how you view it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Johnson?
No, that's good.
Anyone else have questions for staff? Mr. Chazak?
Yeah. So at the P&Z meeting, the public hearing, there was a lot of discussion of the vacation of the street and the plans, plural, of what they might do with it if it's vacated. They were hesitant to move forward, is my understanding, until they knew if they're going to get the street vacated. And I have a little trouble with that, so I guess in the question would be, maybe for James, is can the council say, we want to see something more definitive before we agree to vacate the street, and if that would be something we can do, is there an option here to either table it, or is there an extension allowance, or is there something that we could do to say if a majority of the council were to say, yeah, we're okay with vacating the street as long as we have a more definitive idea what you're going to do, what would be beneficial for the petitioner in the sense that we don't approve it tonight, but we want them to come back with more definitive plans? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, so there's really a few options here. First option would be obviously to deny, ask them to reapply and come back with the stuff that City Council is looking for. Second option would be to potentially table it. Preliminary plats do have 120 days versus the normal 60 days for review. Want to make sure that's consistent with what our city attorney believes as well, and he's shaking his head yes. We would have to consider it at a future meeting and have a timeline for that. And then third option, again, there's multiple conditions in here, contingent upon rezoning, contingent upon street vacation. So an approval tonight would not bind the city council to that street vacation. They would then come back and be able to possibly present a plan for the property. So multitude of options here.
Mr. Kramvik? Anything more, Mr. Chesak?
Well, I guess, just so I'm clear, so approval tonight, as long as we put the conditions in it with the approval, we could have them come back and not give up this vacation, not vacate the street tonight by approving this tonight if we had conditions in there.
Exactly, yep.
All right.
As long as the conditions are in there.
Thank you.
Mayor Blow?
Walk me through what the point of that would be, though. Because if we want more information, and we don't know what that information is, walk me through why we would hold off, or why we would make the decision to then have them come back with those things that we don't know that we want.
So again, if the city council's concerned about the street vacation as presented, certainly the applicant should hear that tonight. If city council would want to see what they're going to do with that, that's where city council may want to, they would have the opportunity to either table it or have them bring it back at a future meeting.
I think that answered what I was asking.
Thank you. Any more questions of staff? If we don't have any more questions of staff, Father Gary, would you like to approach?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. I'm very proud of our people and all the hard work that's gotten us to this point, and all the support behind it. I'd also like to thank the city staff, who's been very helpful in a kind of nuanced, complicated process. So allow me to speak to the overall vision of what we're trying to do, and then hopefully maybe address some of the concerns that you might have. We've been at this for like 3 years now. It involves kind of three pieces: the church, the rectory, and the school. The church is, we're thriving. We bring in around 1,000 people every weekend, hundreds of people during the week. We've been here 150 years and invested a lot in the Brainerd community. Recently, in recent memory, we've invested millions into Brainerd, into this location, and creating it to be a social hub and attraction. The rectory is the priest residence. It's currently undersized for the number of priests we have, and we expect to be getting more joining us soon, even in the next couple months. We're sensitive to the local housing situation. We've analyzed every possible use of the current houses through renovations, additions, remodeling. We've discussed moving the houses, Habitat for Humanity options. We've pursued a lot of different avenues, but we found that the most prudent path forward is a simple rebuild of one house in the place of the current ones. The school is also very successful. It's a huge draw for the area. I know multiple families in Ward 2 that have specifically moved to the neighborhood for the school. Currently, we are totally full. We are planning, hopefully, for an addition soon, ideally even in a high school grades. The obvious location for that addition would be just north of the gym. in the lot, which would displace the current ball field. And so the idea would be that that ball field could be moved over to the north half of the current 9th Street. Safety is also a very top priority. Obviously, we've recently tripled the amount of times that the kids go back and forth between the church and the school. And so there's a lot of activity back and forth. With regard to some of the concerns, one concern I've heard is a question of a master plan. What is our definite plan for the use of the street? The definite plan would be to offer outdoor site amenities, including playgrounds, green space, and walkways to facilitate pedestrian traffic. Regardless of the future high school build or not, the definite plan is a semi-public green space. We have no plans to build where the current street is located in conformity with our utility easement that would take place. Vacating the street would also, as mentioned, facilitate our planning process so we know what exactly we're working with. Another question has been, what is the public benefit? Currently on the site, we have a basketball court, a playground, all of that is open and accessible and very often used by the public. The street vacation would allow for additional safe space for pedestrians, our kids, to roam, play, and use that space. The way we see it is it would be an improvement upon a current city asset from asphalt to more usable space that would be and is already regularly used by our people. This would be more usable and by more people, as is evidenced from the numerous letters and support from the public themselves that you received. There's also been a question of whether we're motivated by parking and vehicular traffic. I think this is pretty obvious that that is not the case, since vacating the street would result in a net loss of parking for the church and the school. Our goal is not to increase parking lots, although if we could recoup some by possibly extending that school parking lot by a row, that would be at most. But so we would either have at most the same amount of parking that we have currently or less, but definitely with more green space. Our intent is to have an expansive, beautiful, publicly accessible pedestrian walkway. That is the goal of the avenue. As the city engineer had mentioned, it's currently the main purpose is for the adjacent properties, all of which we own. In closing, St. Francis, thank God, is a growing community. We're arguably the most vibrant social public hub in the neighborhood. Our proposal is a definite plan to further the mission of the church and the school, and to provide a safe space for our kids to play and for public pedestrian use. The plan is thoroughly vetted by our local community. We've presented it at the Business After Hours event that we hosted earlier. We've presented at local neighborhood groups to our own parishioners, and we've received overwhelming letters and support, as have you. We've also received the unanimous recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve and the recommendation from the city staff to approve, and so we kindly request the City Council to vote and approve our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Gary. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to come up and add something that hasn't already been addressed through our letters or in anything in our packet, please do so now. Name and address, please.
Ed Shaw, 521 North 9th Street, Brainerd. And I am one of the neighbors of the church, and they are a good neighbor. My kids and I were in the basketball court last night. I've almost all of my 30 years I've been in Brainerd, I've lived in the 500 block of North 9th Street. Church has always been a neighbor. I appreciate what they're doing and their presence there. I do have some concerns about the plan, though, and I do have an interest in the neighborhood. I live in the 500 block of North 9th. My wife and I own a duplex, a triplex, 3 other houses in that block. So we have an interest in that area. And I share some of the concerns in the council that the plan does not have a lot of specifics set out. We haven't really seen a schematic of where will there be parking lots, where will there be new structures, what will happen, what does semi-public mean? Is it public or not? And there's a lot of details that need to be worked out. And there are ordinances that are pretty strict about creation of additional parking lots, demolishing houses, creating parking lots. We've seen what's happened by the hospital. That's a problem. And if we allow a demolition of houses, creation of parking here, then if the hospital comes around looking to take another block, we'll have to allow it there too. So I would ask that the council vote no, not because I don't want the church to expand and to grow. I want that to happen, but we need more specifics here. This could set a dangerous precedent, and certainly demolishing 3 very usable structures is very concerning too when we have a severe housing crisis in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to come up? Looks like not. Okay. Thank you, guys. Now, for the council, it's time for us to discuss and decide where we want to go moving forward. Mr. Yeager.
Yes, thank you. Would it be possible, I have just a couple questions for the applicant, if that's possible.
Yeah. Father Gary, if you want to come up and answer Mr. Yeager's questions.
I might invite up Erica as well, who's helping coordinate the project.
Thank you very much.
Have you introduce yourself to, please?
Erica Markison with Architect at Widseth,
Thank you.
7804 Industrial Park Road, Baxter, Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strong, could you pull up image page number 148, please? Very impressive rendering here. So my question is, and I'm just looking at this rendering here, we can all see it, it's beautiful. We have the stained glass, we have the stone facade that's on the front, the stucco torso above, the broad, nice, beautiful overhangs, this fantastic rendering. Could you now switch to page number 153 for me, please? Okay, so this is included in the documentation also, and now you will see a vastly different structure here in the submittal. So you will now notice we have clapboard siding or horizontal siding, board and batten up above. Artistic renderings are an incredibly powerful tool. They're incredibly powerful because they're highly persuasive. So my question here is what is the driving, why are both of these in the documentation? And can you just clear up why I see such a difference in the proposed architectural elevations and renderings between these 2 pages and how they both got in there together? Thank you.
Certainly. The elevations and the plans were something that we provided to the city staff when we first started the initial conversations of this project to figure out what process would be the appropriate steps to proceed with. And since then, because there was a continuation of design happening during that time, we've been talking with the staff over, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months. And during that time, there was further development on the exterior renderings. And so what you see on the rendering is actually reflecting what the design is currently.
Very good. So the parts of the packet are not accurate to what the scope of work is.
The exterior elevations that you see there are not accurate.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Just one more quick follow-up question. Going back to what I heard earlier, I heard all good things, right? The vibrancy of the church, it's a thriving community, the expansion, we're talking high school and staff and all that exciting stuff. But I also did hear you say that your long-term hope would be to add or to double the parking that is on the southeasterly corner of the church. That's roughly 15 spots. Is it your estimation that adding just 15 more spots will support all of this future growth, high school staff? I think it's about 15 spots there. One more row, would it be fair to say that is what your long-term vision is that 15 more spots is all that's going to be required for this?
No, what I was referring to was the school lot.
Okay.
That would expand maybe another row into the current street.
Yep.
So the church parking lot would remain untouched.
Understood, but what I'm getting at here is you're citing the addition of 15 more spots would fulfill your long-term parking needs for all of this growth that we're talking about.
I'll finish that. So the intent is, while we would expand some of the parking adjacent to the school, we would continue to utilize the parking lot that is to the east of the church. That's on the southeast corner. And then there's also a parking lot south of the church, and that too would be utilized for the additional staff that would be needed to staff the growth of the school.
Okay, understood. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair. I'm ready with a motion, and if it fields a second, I will be happy to follow up with my findings of fact, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
If you're ready for a motion, we can always have a motion and have more discussion after the motion.
Yep, very good. So my motion will be to deny the preliminary plat as presented, and that the property remain, subject property remain as a TN1 district, and I so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Yeager. Do we have a second? I'll ask one more time. Do we have a second? That motion fails for lack of second. Do we have more discussion? Mr. Bevins?
No, I was gonna throw an alternative motion out,
Okay.
that we approve the preliminary plat with the three findings of fact. Or conditions.
Motion by Bevins,
Second?
second by Erickson. Any discussion?
Please read the conditions.
Mr. Chesak is requesting that we have the conditions read.
Yes, so the first condition is approval of the vacation of North 9th Street between Ivy and Juniper Street, approval of the rezoning of all parcels to public, semi-public district, approval of the development agreement with the city of Brainerd.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
I will support this motion. I think this is a real exciting project. I absolutely support the rectory that they want to get built. I'm absolutely not sold on the vacation of 9th Street, but that's to come before us at a later time. So I'll support this preliminary plat to keep moving. But if 9th Street is going to be used to turn public parking into private parking, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell to tell me that that is a public benefit, no matter how many times the city engineer says it. So I support this motion to continue moving forward. I do not support the vacation of 9th Street, which will come before us. I need to see clearer, better plans of what would be done with that public street.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any more discussion? Mr. Erickson?
Thank you. So I plan to support the motion. I think this is a very reasonable, very thoughtful proposal, and had a little bit of added benefit of having seen this at the Planning Commission and having some discussion with staff. Regarding the kind of the public purpose of vacation of North 9th, or a portion of North 9th, I think that certainly the safety concerns brought up by the proposal, and oftentimes we hear about higher speeds in and amongst our neighborhoods, particularly around an elementary school. I think that is one public purpose, and certainly this will be somewhat of a traffic calming element for those neighborhoods, for those streets. Like I said, they've been working with city staff for many months. We've had community development director review it, public works director, BPU reviewed it, fire chiefs reviewed it. Their recommendations came before Planning Commission. We heard the applicant, Planning Commission, of course, reviewed it and made that recommendation. So for many of those reasons and more, I plan to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chesak?
I just want clarification, just so I'm sure. By this motion, maybe I can ask Mr. Kramvik, is the street vacated or not?
The street is not vacated. There's a condition upon the preliminary plat that it is contingent upon the street vacation, which is a formal process.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. That was one of my questions too, but Mayor Bedell, go ahead.
Yeah, I hate that you said safety. I hate that you said safety, because now you got me like down my my rabbit hole. So you guys are coming into like a weird thing for me, because I fully support what you're doing, 100%. But vacating the street is something that I've spoke countless times against. On-street parking versus flat surface parking is like, that's my bread and butter. That is the thing that I complain about more often than anything. And I've said many cases here in the city, we've argued for it with the school district, we've argued for it with private businesses. That's the hardest part for me for this. The rectory, I love it. And actually, you had me nervous there, Kevin, for a little bit about those renderings, because I think the rendering looks fantastic. And so I was a little nervous about making sure that what we're seeing is not smoke and mirrors. I am a little nervous. I'd like to see what's going to happen. I'd like to see where is this going. And I don't necessarily mean just what is the plan for right now. I think, Kevin, you've alluded to it. I think maybe Gabe, you've alluded to it as well. Where are we going with this? It's easier for us to make decisions when we have a better idea of where we're going. And right now, it's very hard for me to look at something and say, we're going to take 26 to 28 spaces off the street, and then we're going to make them flat surface parking. I've spoken against that countless times, so I got to be careful with that. But having said that, the growth of this is good for the community. The growth of the church is good for the community. The growth of the school is good for the community. And I'd like to see where this can go. But if I'm going to be consistent with myself, I have to continue to speak in favor for on-street parking, which is what I've continued to say on a regular basis. So the vacating of the street is tough for me, very tough. Especially because, I don't know if you noticed or not, I live on that street. So you're taking away my street. What are we doing here? But I'd like to see where you're going. I want to see more information from you. I really do. But I have to say that the rectory, at least, I like what we're doing with that. I like the look of it. I like where the possibilities are with that, so.
Thank you, Mayor Bedell. Anyone else? I will just say, I was very excited to hear this was coming up. I am excited for these projects to start. I want to help you guys get the most out of whatever it is that you want to do. But I do have my reservations about the street being vacated as well. One being, when I went to the planning and zoning packet, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was last week. Looking through it, I'm looking to see, okay, what are we going to do with the street? What are we going to do with the street? And I couldn't find it. So for me, not knowing exactly what's going to happen with the street makes me second guess what's going on. If there's a group that I'm going to trust to do something beautiful and enhance the neighborhood, it would be you guys in that area for sure. But I think Mr. Shaw alluded to it. There's a big friendly neighbor across the neighborhood that is probably going to follow you if we get this street vacated. And if we do it without really knowing what's going to be there, that makes me very nervous. I didn't know until tonight that this wasn't officially vacating the street until a later date. But I do hate to put you guys in a position to go forward with this, and then we don't vacate the street, and then we have to come back and start all over again. So coming into this, it was my vision for you guys to move forward. It seems like what is ready to go is this rectory. And really all you would need for that to move forward is a CUP, and we would be knocking down one house, replacing it with a bigger, more beautiful house for your priests. And I don't think there would be any opposition to that. The other two houses that are there could remain until you guys move into expanding the church. We have another meeting, looks great, we move forward on that. I would feel more comfortable moving forward if this master plan was set forth in front of us and we could look at it and just know for sure that you guys are making something great. And I know you are, but I want to see it. I think that's just responsible governance right there. But knowing we have more to go, again, I hate to put you guys through another meeting or 2 meetings or whatever this might take and then have to start over, but it looks like that's the motion we have on the table. Because I don't want that for you guys, I'm going to vote against that. I would like to see a more stepwise direction for you guys so we can continue to move forward instead of taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back and beginning the whole process again. I hope that makes sense to you guys because I do support everything that you guys are trying to do. I see kind of the future of what you guys see with the school and the church. It's gonna continue to expand because you guys are all great. I'm not a parishioner at St. Francis, but I've been to all kinds of funerals and weddings there, and it's always awesome. I love being in there. And that beauty expanding out into the rest of the neighborhood is something that would benefit everybody around here. So, that being said, if anybody else has anything to say on this before we vote,
I would request a roll call.
roll call vote, okay? Any other advice to the organization of St. Francis?
Mr. President?
Mr. Chezak?
I would echo most everything you said, because I indicated earlier, I think it's our responsibility to know what's going to go. So if we need to see it before I can approve it, and no pun intended, but need to know what's going to be there. And I'd be in league with Mr. President O'Day to vote no for that reason. I support everything you're doing otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chezak. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I too agree with the council president on that, where maybe it would be easier to stop. You've heard some feedback of what we want. Maybe you get there and come back and ask. I'm still going to vote yes, even though I have reservations about some of the specifics, optimistic that they can get that done in time for coming for those future things. And if they don't, it would be unfortunate to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because I absolutely agree that the rectory is a slam dunk. We wouldn't deny that at all. I would even support tearing down all 3 of the houses and putting up the rectory on the 1 block and deal with the street vacation later when we're looking at a school expansion or something. I think that would be the best way to go. But what you have requested is this. I'm going to vote yes, with the caveat that I don't support moving forward with all 3 of the conditions we're placing on the yes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Erickson?
I'm going to support. I'm the liaison to the Planning Commission, so I'm going to carry forward that recommendation from the Planning Commission and share some of the concerns. Hopefully we see more information going forward about the street vacation, but I plan to support.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Ward 2, anything?
No, sir.
Okay.
I made the motion.
Okay.
No.
Hearing no other comments, let's go to a vote. Tony, please call the roll.
Bevins?
Yes.
Chezak?
Nope.
Johnson?
Yes.
Stunek?
Yes.
Yeager?
Nope.
Erickson?
Yes.
O'Day?
No. That motion passes 4-3. Look forward to seeing you guys at the next step. We'll make it as smooth as we can going forward. Thank you, guys. I know most of you in the audience are here for this. If you guys want to stay, you're more than welcome to. If not, then we'll give you guys a minute to clear.
I'll cover for you.
Tough one. Yeah, we did. We should have just said it.
All right. Stunek left too? Oh. I thought he was just here for the St. Francis part too.
He's here to tinkle.
We'll give him another minute. Nope, that's okay. All right, let's move on. We have, next new business, we have 9B. This is a first reading, proposed ordinance 1581, considering rezoning and zoning text amendment for Paradigm Auto, 310 West Laurel Street. And this is Community Development Director James Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. President. Al Schmidt has submitted a request to rezone the property at 310 West Laurel Street to Makers and Employment Zoning District and for a zoning text amendment to allow for the operation or expanded operation of U-Haul vehicle rental business in the Makers and Employment District. The property is currently in violation as U-Haul trucks are illegally parked, stored on an unimproved surface. In addition, there are too many U-Haul rental units at the property. What's currently allowed into the Town Center District and what they had previously been allowed was 7 spaces based on the zoning code. Council gave the applicant 90 days to work with staff to submit an application, so this is that process carried forth for, I believe it was in 2024. So the applicant has proposed paving a large portion of the new and existing parking lot with asphalt to accommodate the U-Hauls. The proposed text amendment and rezoning would allow the applicant to have more than 7 U-Hauls, pave the parking area, and then would not require fence screening, which is also required per our ordinance for outdoor storage and rental. Rezoning and text amendments are both ordinance changes, so staff recommends to conduct the first reading of proposed ordinance 1581 and dispense with the actual reading. Note, a vote to dispense with the actual reading of the ordinance must be unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. Does anyone on council have questions for staff?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Bevins?
I have a procedural question.
Okay.
I do not support this, but I don't want to read the ordinance. Is there a way I can vote no?
Well, what we've done in the past is if there isn't a unanimous vote, we have a, you're free to make a motion following. And in past situations, we've had motions to not have the reading that have passed. One was the entire zoning code, if I remember right. Mr. Langel?
We could just have an initial vote to forego the reading of the ordinance.
It would be better to have that vote beforehand.
What's that?
It would be best to have that vote first.
Yeah, you can start with that and then have a separate vote on the actual passing of the ordinance.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Okay,
Absolutely. I'd like to make a motion if you'll give me an opportunity.
Does anybody else want to say anything before we have a motion? Okay, Mr. Bevins?
I'd like to forego this reading.
Okay.
I'll second.
That's a motion, and motion by Bevins, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Now, does anybody else have questions for staff regarding this? Nobody? Okay.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I was Kevin was bothering me.
Yeah, it happens.
Which one?
I understand.
This property's been in violation of our zoning code for how long, Mr. Kramvik?
For numerous years at this point now.
Decades? We've gone through 3 planners.
Yeah, so there's been issues and then corrections, issues and then corrections. I believe, without looking at everything in detail right now, this is kind of the 3rd corrective action where something's happened and then it's been later corrected, or potentially.
I'm sorry, it's been corrected? These U-Hauls are in violation of our ordinance.
This one hasn't. I would say the 2 previous ones were by city council. So they were in violation, brought an application to city council to deal with the issue. So they were in violation on, I believe, opening the auto repair shop, and then I believe it was the detailing shop before that. But I do know they had to come back for a rezoning for the auto repair shop.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a subsequent motion.
I've got a question.
Oh, yep, when questions are done.
Okay, Mr. Johnson?
I've got a question. So they've had 2 other longstanding issues that have been resolved. Have either of them been resolved by them taking action to fix something? Or have they just been going to rechange all of the zoning and ordinances regarding their property?
So the rezoning, I believe, is what allowed them to then operate as an auto repair business, if I remember right. So they'd have to come and ask for that rezoning request. So, I believe it was after the city or a complaint was called about the business that then they came forward with it.
So they didn't do anything except for ask to be rezoned. What was the next issue?
So after that one, it is the U-Haul issue, I believe, even from the auto repair, there was a request to pave the parking lot. When you go back into all the writings from Mr. Osgarden from the past. Then the latest one was the U-Haul business. Staff received a complaint on that. And that's when staff kind of looked through the history of the property and realized that 7 U-Haul spaces were all that were to be allowed on the property.
Okay, and it was to be paved and screened, I believe.
And it was to be paved and screened, correct.
Right, and it's not paved, it's not screened, but now they found a whole new zoning district they want to be in, because then they don't need to pave or screen?
They would be required to pave as presented. They would not be required to screen. So much like a used auto site would not be required to screen, but they would be required to pave.
So you say there's nothing adjacent that's in the Makers Employment Zoning District? It's next to the railroad, and then you don't mention what is to the west of it?
I believe maybe in the findings were on there, but it is surrounded mainly by Town Center District.
And that's what it currently is?
And that's what it currently is zoned.
It's currently Town Center, it's surrounded by Town Center. So that's the U-Hauls, that's the repair shop, and then even to the west of that, I believe is a professional service building, right? Some insurance and chiropractic?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're gonna shoehorn in a new, different zoning district that nothing around it is zoned the same, just to make it easier for them to comply with the screening, or the lack of screening, but the paving requirement that they've had for 10 years that has yet to be resolved.
I believe the term is spot zoning, sir.
Spot zone, we're gonna spot zone it, thank you.
Yeah, certainly could be issues with spot zoning. I believe when city council looked at this originally, they did see town center around all of it when the applicants first came here and had wanted that town center district to remain in that spot. From a staff perspective, I'd probably have concerns about allowing a U-Haul or rental business in the town center district. So in staff's opinion, it wouldn't work in that district, and that's where Makers and Employment is near it, but again, it is not adjacent.
But it was what, a little over 2 years ago, we rezoned everything, and we called this town center district, and they came and said, we don't want town center, and we said, no, you're town center. Now staff is saying, well, since they're not fixing anything, we better just change the zoning district.
Yeah, thank you. So at that time, I did make the argument that the town center district really had the same advantage of the general commercial district that they were asking for. So there's really no difference between it, and that it would just become a spot zone at this point. What they're asking here, in my opinion, town center district wouldn't really work for what they're looking to do here, because from staff perspective, I wouldn't want to see that around or in any other town district area within the city. So originally, again, staff did not see a difference between general and commercial and town center district. There is a difference in Makers and Employment.
Okay, and then one final question, Mr. President. Right now, currently, as the law allows, they can have 7 U-Haul trucks. How many trucks are parked in their yard right now?
It's definitely more than that.
It's more than 7, so they haven't even righted that to come in and ask for the change.
They have
That's
not.
kind of with our interim use permits with the short-term rentals. Like, if you're operating illegally, we're not going to give you a license. And this kind of falls into that category of, if you're not following the rules, we're not gonna just change the rules for you. Right?
Yep, certainly understand your perspective.
Yeah,
Yep.
be similar, thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Erickson?
Just 2 comments. I was gonna also bring up that when we did the zoning ordinance change in 2022, we made lots of changes to a lot of different zones. This was one of them that was appealed at that time. There was a lot of discussion about that, whether that town center was the right zone for that. I argued that it was not at that time. I still feel that same way. My second point is, if you look at the town center zone, it's kind of that river to rails corridor, a lot of, obviously town center. Then there's this kind of small node that crosses the river and includes this area. So my argument is, I don't think that this small neighborhood area or this small commercial node is town center. It's south of 210, it's south of the railroad tracks. There's very mixed use area there. There is some, kind of commercial areas there directly west and kitty corner. There's a heavier residential area. And then of course there's the railroad tracks. And then I would argue too that, one of the greatest natural geographic elements in the world separates this property from our actual town center. So I don't think town center is the right zone for this, and I think that's evidenced by all the continuing problems that we've had with this. So instead of, I think, I support the staff's recommendation or the recommendation coming out of the Planning Commission that we could solve this by making that and perhaps other areas not town center. Anything west of the Mississippi, I don't think is town center. I don't think that town center is the correct zone for that area. So for that reason, I was going to support the planning commission's recommendation.
Mr. Erickson? Anyone else?
I'm just ready with a motion.
Okay. If we don't have any further questions or comments, go ahead, Mr. Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move forward to direct staff to enforce the zoning code and to whatever it is.
Second.
Motion by Bevins and second by Johnson to enforce the zoning code.
I will speak to this motion. Mr. Erickson is incorrect. The problem is not the zoning. We have had abusive and beratement from this property owner for over a decade. There's been 3 planners that have tried to get these people to follow the code. The last time we were here, we suggested that they move the U-Haul business, and we would even help them to find new property in the industrial park. I believe you made the motion, Mr. Chair.
I probably did.
I think you did. Mr. Kramvik, has there been anything moved forward on moving the U-Haul business and swapping property with the city?
I did speak with the applicant about that. That did not seem like a realistic opportunity for them.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson is correct. This has been a problem, and we've denied the zoning requests multiple times, including the last time, unanimously. And it's because it doesn't fit here. I'm sorry, had they followed the rules from the get-go, we wouldn't have this problem. Had they followed the rules any of the times that our planners had gone there, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The truth be told, the problem has been us. Now, we're not enforcing our own rules, and they're taking advantage of it. And it's not right. And it's really not right for the other 15,364 citizens that do follow the rules. So, they brought in the U-Haul business after the auto repair, by the way. They never asked anybody, they never filled out any applications, or they would have. And they certainly knew. When did Mr. Osgarden's first letter go out? 10 years ago? They certainly knew that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. That was going to be my question. When this U-Haul business did start, was it in compliance? When this U-Haul business moved to this location, was it in compliance? Has it ever been in compliance?
I am unsure of that since I've been here. Reading the statements from Mr. Oscar, I don't believe so. It seems like there's always been more than 7 U-Hauls, but again, I can't speak from when it originally started.
I will say that if not, this just feels like, just like what Mr. Bevins was saying, they've spent 10 years just telling us no, and now we're just making it okay. So it sets an example for whoever else wants to do that. Whatever you want to do in whatever zone you want, just start the business, and we'll call you every once in a while and tell you not to, but you know, in the end, we'll just change the zone. And I'm not saying that that's what you're trying to do, Mr. Kramvik. I know you've gone through hell and back with this, just this one spot, this one issue in this one plot. But I don't think it sends the right message to just have us comply to what they want to do. It doesn't make sense. I respect what Mr. Erickson's point of view is, but it's not the way that it was gone about. Does anybody else have anything to say? Mr. Chezak?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to thank Mr. Bevins and Mr. Johnson. Reminds me of a debate pretty much we had here on an issue regarding a fence in Northeast Brainerd, and I appreciate their input. It brings me right down to earth on that, and I'll be supporting Mr. Bevins' motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chezak.
Mr. President.
Yeah,
I
Mr.
just
Erickson.
want to respond to, and thank you, Mr. Bevins, for the additional clarification and history on that. I agree. We can't have, exceptional rules for certain properties and things like that. I will support the motion. However, notwithstanding, I do still think that is town center is incorrect zoning, and that was the point that I was making, regardless of the specific issue. But with the additional clarification of the problems that we've had, I will support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. I will reiterate that the offer is still on the table we made to do a land swap. We never got a formal answer on that. You just told us an answer now, Mr. Kramvik. I've heard that from you, but we've never had a formal answer to that offer to the council in an email form or any other form that I can remember. So if this does get denied, it's not taking his business away. It's enforcing our ordinances. It's enforcing our zoning code. But he still has an opportunity to somehow do a land swap with us and have this business where it belongs, in my opinion.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chesa.
So what you're saying, though, does that delay the enforcement of the code, according to the motion?
No. Okay. No. But I would like to have that motion clarified because the motion is saying, let's have our staff enforce the code was the end of the motion, but specifically, their job is to enforce the code. So your motion is to have them do their job. So if we would like to be more specific to that plot of land, that might be helpful for staff.
No, I just want them to enforce the code.
Okay. That is the
Whatever,
motion.
I mean, I don't know what a zoning code enforcement is. We've got an attorney and he works for a company with a bunch of attorneys. And we've got a community development director and a public works director and an engineer. I'm sure there must be some consequences to zoning violations. Right? I would presume, and I don't think it's pertinent to any one person. I think it's imperative that we enforce the code citywide. It just happens this is the one that's in front of us now. And this happens to be an egregious violation over a long period of time, which just emphasizes the fact that part of the problem is we have not given that instruction. Please enforce the zoning code.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. Mr. Langle?
Thank you. So the motion is to enforce zoning code. Certainly there's a process for doing that. We can do that if the motion is approved or even if it's not. But the request tonight is to rezone the property. So we will need a separate motion on that request.
We did.
That's not what I heard. All I heard was a motion to enforce the code.
No, the first motion was to not hold the first reading. It passed unanimously, Mr. Langle.
It was to forego the reading, it was a separate motion then is needed to deny the rezoning, direct staff to issue findings consistent with the discussion of the council.
We'll do that.
Okay. We can have a
The
motion.
rezoning and the text amendment, correct.
Okay, we can have another motion after this. But does anybody have any more comments before we vote?
Is that, I guess procedurally, is that the way you want to do this, so?
That's okay, that's fine by me, yep. Okay? Hearing no more comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, against, same sign. That motion passes. We have a follow-up motion, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I would move that we deny the rezoning until such a time when they are in compliance with our planning and zoning rules, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second I heard over here by Yeager, or Chazak.
Can I get a clarification on the motion?
It's all funny.
It was opening up that they could apply again when they're in compliance, not that we approve
Understood.
after they're in
I
compliance.
don't think
Thank
that's
you.
necessary to have that as part of
Then I'll restate to deny the rezoning request. All right.
Okay, motion amended, and by second. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on that motion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. Moving on to 9C. This is consideration of a conditional use permit and variance for the Sweet Properties LLC, 324 5th Street South. Again, this is Community Development Director James Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the applicant has requested a conditional use permit to add 2 additional residential apartment units on the second floor for a total of 3 units, while maintaining the existing commercial space on the first floor. Also, a variance request from the landscape requirements in the town center district for trees and shrubs. The applicant is proposing the addition of 1 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom unit. Both units meet the size requirements of the zoning code. As noted in the findings, the applicant has ample parking for the increased usage of the site. Considering the variance request, the general landscaping improvement standard states that 4 shrubs shall be planted per dwelling unit. So again, adding to that would require the 8 shrubs. Variances may be granted when the applicant for the variance established there are practical difficulties in complying with the zoning ordinance. So again, the building has existed on the property for a number of years, and there's also a 0-foot setback that is not conducive for landscaping enhancements. So with that, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the conditional use permit and variance request for 324 5th Street South as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. Anybody have questions for Mr. Kramvik? Mr. Johnson?
Do you know what kind of condition that parking lot is in?
I do not.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Does anybody have a motion if we don't have any discussion?
Mr. President, I'd move to approve.
Motion by Erickson, second by, was that Yeager or Chezak?
Second, Jezak.
Chezak?
Jezak.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Looks like none. Let's go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Against, same sign. That one passes. Moving on to 9E. Nope, 9D.
We only could hope.
We'll go to 9D.
Okay.
This preliminary and final plat for 3Pete LLC 15770 Delwood Drive. I believe this is again Mr. Kramvik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So the purpose of this request is to create a common interest community. Conditional use permit to construct a mini cell storage facility was issued 2/21/23. The applicant began site work in 2023, and the building permit was issued in 7/3 of 24. Building 1 is located in North End and is in process of construction. The applicant was required to update structural plans to include firewalls between the units to allow additional or potentially allow additional uses in other than mini storage. The CIC plat will allow each unit to be sold to individual property owners. So really, staff looked at this, and one of the criteria for the plats is how is it consistent with the comprehensive plan. Economic development goal 3, help local businesses grow and attract new businesses. Policy 2, attract new businesses best suited for the community's assets, increasing local employment options and building the city's tax base. Number 3, encourage entrepreneurs to start their own businesses. In staff's opinion, the proposed project allows new businesses and entrepreneurs to start small in their privately owned space. Small businesses in this proposed common interest development are far better for the city's tax base and economic interest than simply storage units. Again, all potential future uses will be reviewed by staff prior to operation. If there's anything that would require a conditional use permit, it would come before City Council. Planning Commission considered this request and recommended approval of the preliminary and final plat as presented with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. Anyone have questions of staff?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the dimension of this first structure, what's the approximate height, width, length?
So that was included. The applicant is here to potentially answer some of those questions. I think each individual unit was around 700 to 900 square feet in size.
That's all I needed.
Okay.
That's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shezak. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. Do we know if this property is in the rural service district or the urban service district?
I am not sure.
I would like that to be included in future findings of facts, please.
Certainly do that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anybody else have a question? Mayor Bordeaux?
Not a question, just an observation. I just want to say it's the first time I'm seeing that this is 3Pete as in Pete, the name Pete. I'm going to tip my cap towards that one. Nice work.
That's all? Again? That's it. Okay, great value.
Mr. President, I got a motion to
Mr. Erickson?
move to approve the preliminary and final plat for 15770 Delwood Drive as presented.
Second.
Motion by Erickson, second by Chezak. Do we have any more discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. All right, moving on. We are on 9E. This is adopting a resolution approving plans and authorizing bidding for improvement 1712 Wright and 10th Street reconstruction project. This is Public Works Director Mike Habekorst.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a reconstruction project on Wright Street and with Southeast 10th Street and the industrial park of South Brainerd. And this project will be including curb and gutter, water main, and storm basin with obviously asphalt repavement with this. And with that, I can take any questions. This is actually, sorry, this is the 4-step of the 5-step process. So we're just asking that we go out to bid, and then we'll be bringing those bids back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Habegorst. Anybody have questions on this? Seeing none, we're looking for a motion to adopt the attached resolution approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisements for bids for improvement 1712.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Chesak, second by Bevins. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a resolution. Tony, please call the roll.
Bevins?
Yes.
Chesak?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yeah.
Stunek?
Yes.
Yeager?
Yep.
Erickson?
Yes.
O'Day?
Yes, that one passes. Moving on to 9F, priorities for federal House appropriations. This was something brought by myself to Administrator Broyles, but I'll let Administrator Broyles start off and then we'll have a discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congressman Stauber's office is seeking local community projects for FY26. The tentative deadline for this is March 14th. Attached to this agenda item are the funding requests, the instructions essentially for FY25. The rules for 26 haven't been released yet, but they are anticipated they'll be quite similar to 25. So as I've had discussions with President O'Day, I think we are suggesting, well, I'll just go through these. Number one in the list of priorities would be $5 million for our water treatment project. That would be an 80-20 split as we've talked with Congressman Stauber's staffers. The second item, number two, the $9.9 million for the 6 turbines. And please correct me, Mr. President, if I misstate, but I think that President O'Day had a conversation with Congressman Stauber's staffer, and some of the results from that were dam projects are not eligible to their knowledge. So this turbine project would probably come off this list. However, the BPU Commission, I believe, is working with some state funding vehicles, and that process is underway. So I think the BPU Commission is pursuing state funding for these turbines. Third one is the pedestrian bridge. That's $6 million. And again, that is a 90-10 split. As we've talked to Congressman Stauber's office, it just really depends on where he's looking to find this money. And then the last item, there's a biosolids project. It's not really for FY26. It'd probably be more likely 27. But this is something that we'll have to just have conversations with the city of Baxter. There are some differences because of our populations. We're over 10,000. So if we look for funding for that project, it would fall under the EPA. Baxter being a town under $10,000, if they are the financial agent for that funding, that would be an ag grant, and the split would be 75-25 versus 80-20. So again, probably not for FY26, but for FY27, we'd have to have some conversations with the city of Baxter. So I think what, and I'll turn it over to Mr. President here in just a moment, but I think what we're looking for is maybe priorities would be, instead of 3, we would have 2. $5 million for the water treatment project and $6 million for the pedestrian bridge. Did you have anything to add, Mr. President, to that?
No, I just wanted to bring this to the attention of the council to make sure that we have actual motion. This is something, Stauber's office is allowed to, or he's able to submit 15 projects a year. They want to get 100% of those projects passed through the Appropriations Committee. He wants to have high quality or high priority projects, and water projects particularly have been successful. That's why this one came up first. We've already got $5 million towards our water treatment project. Right after that, the price tag shot up from $5 million to $10 million. So just getting the rest of that through this would be a huge deal for our water facilities. With that, I'm not 100% sure if that $5 million would count towards our 80-20 split, but I think there's a possibility that it would. The hydro facility, hopefully that works out in another way. The PED bridge, that's something that we have a lot of eyes on right now, trying to get through that with a lot of different grant funding opportunities. But I wanted to make sure that we were all aware of this moving forward. Mr. Stauber is always looking for these, and I think we should every year take a look at this and submit some of these projects and see if they work out. if anybody has questions, Mr. Chesak?
Yeah, on the first item there, the 5 million for the water treatment, is that specific to the reclamation, water reclamation? Maybe Mr. Evans?
Mr. Evans? I think it is.
Yes, the 5 million was specifically for the reclamation project.
Yep. That would be the one, yeah. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, if you think of another project that is coming up that's got a hefty price tag, that,
Water tower.
the water tower, well,
Water, just tell them there's still water in it.
we just fill it with water and it might work. Mr. Johnson?
I have a motion if you're ready.
Yeah, looks like.
Okay, so I would move to prioritize $5 million for our water reclamation treatment project, or motion to ask for $5 million for the water treatment project, first priority. Second priority, $6 million for the pedestrian bridge crossing at Lum Park 210 and Cayuna Lakes Trail, and I so move.
Second.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion by Johnson, second by Chesak. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Council President, for bringing this forward, and City Administrator, and for having the conversations with our Congressman's staff. I really think the $5 million for the water project is really exciting, and prioritizing that, I think, is important, because we've already received $5 million from the state. We only have till 2027, end of 2027, to have an executed contract, or that money disappears, and we're starting back at ground zero. You know, we were told this was the priority at BPU a few years ago, so we prioritized it, we got it funded, and now it's at the bottom of the list, not a priority. But I think it's important, since it's already half paid for with state money, if we can get federal money to pay for the other half, it's a no-brainer. So I really like this prioritization.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chesak?
Yeah, the water reclamation is, my limited knowledge is, we flush the water back through the filter that takes out your manganese and iron in order to get filters clean. But what happens is now that water just goes back into the river, and there's millions of gallons. So what this reclamation will do is, when we flush, we reclaim it and then filter it again, and it goes into our use. So it's a wonderful thing that we don't do now. So this will be a huge improvement. And we pump the water. We're essentially pumping it to run it back out to the river, so by flushing it. So I hope I got that right, Mr. Evans. Close enough?
Oh, that's close enough.
A layman's way, maybe?
All right. Any more questions, discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign. That motion passes. As far as the third priority is concerned, that would be a 90-10 split. It's something that we can look at going forward. Jesse, I know you've kind of taken the lead on that one. Is that something that you've come across already? As far as looking for funds for the ped bridge? I haven't heard back from any of the ones we applied yet. Okay. We can always come back and, well, we can't, because we have until the 14th. So if we want to add another one, if you guys wanted to apply for both, they're going to sift through these, and maybe this one won't make it, maybe it would, but we can apply for both, or we can leave it as is and just apply for the one. That's up to you guys.
Well, my motion was to prioritize water treatment plant, but also do the ped bridge.
Oh, okay. Okay, I misunderstood. Sorry, I don't understand everything.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, no, it's not. All right, don't confuse me. Let's move on.
Late.
Good idea.
9G, we have authorization for Councilmember Bevins to attend the Crow Wing County Board on behalf of the Northland Arboretum. Again, this is City Administrator Nick Broyles.
Yes, we just received a request a few weeks back from the Executive Director of the Arboretum. It was sent to both Brainerd and Baxter. They were looking for representation to attend the County Commission meeting on the 11th to advocate for the regional treatment designation of the Arboretum. I thought, as the liaison to the Arboretum, I thought Council Member Bevins would be the appropriate person to attend that meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
I'd be willing to support this if Mr. Bevins can show us his membership card to the Arboretum.
I can.
Good.
I can't right now, I didn't bring it with me, but I have one.
Mr. Bevins, I think we want to just make sure that we do support what they're doing. Could you fill us in on what they are doing?
Absolutely. If you recall, not that long ago, this body authorized a letter of support for the regional designation for the Arboretum. The reason it's going to the county board is our arboretum does not qualify for as a regional designate. The county has to own a certain percentage, of which they already do own almost enough, but not quite enough. So what's gonna happen on the 11th, what could happen, or the proposal is that another, and I apologize, I don't have the acreage with me, but a certain number of acreage will be sold back to the county, thereby giving them ownership in enough of the arboretum that they can be the regional designate, not the Northland Arboretum, and then the Northland Arboretum will lease that property back from the county. We actually the Arboretum already does that, but just not quite enough to qualify for regional designation. What then happens is that opens up the door for a ton more funding as a regional designated park.
Excellent.
Yeah, it is a good deal.
This is exactly the kind of thing that we actually directed them to start doing, and it sounds like that's what they're doing. So moving forward, I think our contract with the Arboretum goes through 2026, correct?
I believe so. And they did mention, Mr. Chair, that even though the city, our sister city, our partner in citizenship, the great and wonderful Baxter, is providing for the summer of 2026 at the Arbor Day event, police support. So even though they're not able to provide the same finances that we can, they are working to equalize the amount that they do contribute in kind. And the other thing is they're building a bike park, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. And I'll explain more as we get into that. A part of it is supposed to open on that Arbor Day, but the city of Baxter is providing construction equipment and operators at no charge.
Thank you.
I mean, they're trying.
Yeah, they definitely are. I've noticed a change since this new executive director has taken over. He's been very ambitious with looking for fundraising opportunities, so this is great. All right, looking for a motion to authorize Council Member Bevins to attend Crow Wing County Commission meeting on March 11th to support the ARB seeking GMRPTC regional designation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Stunek, second by Johnson. Any discussion?
Maybe later.
Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Against, same sign. That one passes. Moving on to staff reports. As we always do, we're gonna start with Tony Gage. Still. I thought, Chief, nothing? Okay. Technology Director, Sean Strong.
Nothing.
Connie, Finance. Mike Abigors, Public
Nothing to
Works.
report, thank you.
James Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just quick here, there's an upcoming EDA meeting this Thursday at 7:30. The EDA will be recapping the 2024 EDA activities, discussing the quarterly consultant goals, as well as setting the April workshop agenda. Wanted to also let City Council know that we began our tours of childcare facilities. Certainly want to hear what some of the issues they have, maybe with expansion in there, and then maybe what the city can do to help out with that. So we just visited last Friday with a couple of members of the EDA, a couple childcare facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. Attorney Langle.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Chris Schubert. Chris Evans.
Well, uncharacteristic for me, I do have something tonight.
Excellent.
Just a couple project updates and a notice of a meeting. So I'll begin with project updates. Basically, we are in process of having 2 projects added to the project priority list for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and their clean water revolving funds. And in particular, that is for the 2026-2027 main lift station rebuild, and for the preliminary start in 27-28 for a 20-year wastewater treatment plant capital improvement plan and plant upgrade. And in conjunction with the 20-year capital improvement plan and plant upgrade, on the 13th at 5:30 p.m. at BPU, there will be a joint wastewater management board meeting for that body.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Eric Charpentier.
Nothing this evening, Mr. President?
All right, we can hear you good, though.
Excellent.
Administrator Broyles.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to recognize and thank Patrick Wassow for his service to the city of Brainerd and his mentorship professionally for me. He will be missed.
Thank you. Mayor's report. The Honorable Mayor Bedeau.
He went to Florida. He didn't pass away. Sean, cue up Tom Petty. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is officially the city of Brainerd's last dance with Mary Jane.
Oh, gee.
James, you can retire your name badge as the weed guy. We're moving on, folks. We made that decision. We're moving on. I just want to say super fast, follow up on the Arboretum. I was there with my kids and my fiance on Sunday. A little chilly still here in Minnesota, but if you haven't been in there, they got some cool stuff going on in there. And my kids really enjoyed making mud pies at their little natural playground that they got there. I do want to say to the Arboretum, I apologize, my membership has expired and I have not paid you, so I owe you some money for me and my family coming through there, but my check's in the mail, I promise. And then lastly, careful.
Incriminated himself.
Well, as we've said before, that's Baxter. So
No jurisdiction.
no jurisdiction.
It's Thursday.
Lastly, I just want to say that Saturday, March 15th is St. Patrick's Day. Nick Broyles is leaving us, so he's not going to be able to be in the parade this year. But James, going to be in there. Mike, going to be in there. Going to be a lot of fun. But also, leading up to it, the week of, ladies and gentlemen, the medallion hunt is on. This year's prize, $500 cold hard cash. So in the next week or so, a medallion will be hidden and there will be clues to be had. I know, we'll get a picture of it this time so people know what it looks like. So
Yeah, you should have some stipulation that they must contact you within 5 hours of finding it.
Yes, we will do that as well. Please let us know if you find it. Also, firefighters, calm down. Calm down, firefighters, this year. You guys were hot on the trail, but yet came up cold. So just let everybody know. So we've got Saturday, March 15th, parade at 1 p.m., but the festivities start the whole week, and it'll be a lot of fun here in the city of Brainerd. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving on to council member reports. Can we start with Mr. Chesak tonight?
Yep, I have to ask the mayor, though, first of all, about some sort of audible medallion so blind people can participate.
Beeping.
I don't know if it works that way.
We might have to have two.
$5 is enough for me.
We'll have to have two different ones.
I don't need 500. Anyway, a little bit on the utility commission meeting on the 25th to Mr. Evans is about the new improved wastewater treatment facility. That is a heck of a report to check out. I think that can be provided. I think Mr. Habekorst indicated that he may be sending that out if you haven't already. It's easily found if you ask for it. It's a lot of money, folks. It's anywhere from $60 to $100 million. So this is a big, huge project, and I just give Bolton and Mink did a fabulous report. But a couple of things from that meeting: we had ClimaVision leases starting. That's a radar equipment that's new, covers different area than what the general weather radar covers, and it would be beneficial, I believe, to fire and police. I think folks over there would agree with that. For early warnings that sometimes you won't get with the current system from the National Weather Service. And then we also had that wonderful presentation, if you care to get it on YouTube for the meeting. I was actually sitting right here during that meeting for the first time ever for utility commission meetings. So this is a fabulous new thing that we started. I'm really glad that the council approved that recommendation to the public utilities meetings. And we had a couple of other things that are happening, and just check here. There's a new service they're going to put out for notifying people of emergencies, and that'll be coming up. And again, this wastewater treatment, wastewater management board, that's something that coming up on the 13th. You said, right? You know, I would encourage us to adjourn to that tonight, because Mike and I go to that, right? We're on that, okay. And there may be a commission, utility commission, a quorum there, and I think they're going to have a notice. I would encourage whoever is putting that out to just say there may be a quorum of either a city council, Baxter and Brainerd and the utility commission to have it covered, because there's gonna be a lot of information shared at this regarding this, and we have to get it going. And I was encouraged by Mr. Higgins, the new member, of pushing this and getting an motion and passing it, that we get going on it right away. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chesak. We'll jump over to Councilman Stunek.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Yeager?
Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you heard, of course, the ARB met last week, and lots of exciting stuff going on to the ARB. If you've got kids or like to bike or like to go out on the trails, the ARB is the place to be. And they're starting up early because the weather has been on our side. So great job, Trevor, and all that's being done at the ARB. Library board, you heard a little bit about a lot of exciting things happening at the library. Roof's getting fixed, some doors are getting fixed. And I also went to the Downtown Business Social last Wednesday. So at, well, it's still Sage on Laurel, but it's going to change names pretty soon. So lots of exciting things. And as the mayor mentioned, boy, you got to give a second shout out to what's happening downtown on the 15th. If you're not there, I mean, you're missing out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. Chairman Erickson?
Nothing tonight.
Chairman Johnson?
Couple things. Arbitration ruling, is that public? So I think you all saw it, hit your inboxes. The arbitrator has ruled on our arbitration with the IBEW 31 Public Utilities Group as far as length of contract, wages, non-discrimination, sided with the city's positions. We had the more logical, rational position that made sense for the contract, so we're moving forward with our Flaherty and Hood wages citywide, so that was really good to see. We didn't get a favorable ruling on Juneteenth, so now that bargaining unit is up 13 paid holidays when we try to keep everybody else at 12, so might have to buy that away in the future. But overall, just a fantastic ruling. Really appreciative of Joe's law firm. Ann and Tim were absolute great helps. You know, another shout out to Patrick Wassow and Nick and Chris and just so many people who worked on this over the couple of years. I couldn't be happier with how this ruling turned out. So it's good for the city. It's good for the city long term. And then I know this was on the agenda tonight, but also this memorandum of agreement we got tonight where we can move forward and get to hiring these positions for the technology department is really big because the IBEW union was the one that held up 3 BPU positions for like 2 years last time we tried getting an MOA. This time we got it done in just an afternoon. And again, Tim from Joe's law firm was there and was a great help to the city. So just all things are happy in the labor relation world today.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I don't have much to add. I just want to say thank you to those who attended tonight. It's always nice when we have something controversial come up. Maybe it's controversial, maybe it's not, but there's different opinions on something like that, and everybody just kind of stays friendly and calm. That was refreshing. It's not always that way. A lot of times we have a lot of snickering and negative attitudes. Maybe people looking at you like they want to kill you. I did not feel that way tonight.
Well, just wait till the Facebook post.
Well, okay, moving forward. These decisions aren't always easy. We're just always looking for the best path forward. We don't always agree on those things, but we're going to keep on working on it and just move forward. With that, let's adjourn. Looking for a motion to adjourn to a closed session pursuant to Minnesota statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3A to conduct City Administrator Broyles' 2024 performance review. Looks like we have a motion by who?
Us, down here.
Bevins, second by Stunek.
Yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, same sign?
Yeah, I gotta go.
All right, let's give it,
That is the workshop.